objective is just to facilitate the discussion. And thank you for having accepted to chair this meeting and this discussion. As all of you know, G20 under the Presidency of South Africa is happening this year in November. Now, the discussion that we have with the South African government is inclusivity being one of the central pillars of the G20 discussion. South Africa has thought it's very important to hear from the non-G20 member. So the non-G20 member issues would be brought to the G20 table. It's important, it's an excellent initiative, and it is also legitimate as non-G20 members are majority in the globe. Therefore, His Excellency, supported by his team, probably will guide you through the key pillar of digital economy as it will be discussed in November. What exercise are we trying to do? It's a stock-taking exercise. Hearing not only from government, around the table we have UAE, we have Qatar, who are non-G20 members, but we also want to hear from the private sector. It's important because common denominator is about investment in digital development. Therefore, His Excellency kindly accepted to have this informal gathering to discuss about private sector members, to understand what you believe are the important issues, what should be brought to the table of discussion of the G20 in November. We will have a second exercise probably in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, in September during the GSR. So I count on you. It's an open discussion. We will obey to the Chatham House rules. We are having a conversation. My objective, and I believe we can succeed if we can, as a group, provide our input to the President of G20, so we have a chance not to have the issues addressed this year, but probably with the chance to be addressed next year. The discussion will be facilitated by Smart Africa. Mr. President, everybody knows, he is leading 41 countries in Africa. Probably by having a dialogue together, we may come to some common denominator. I count on your enthusiasm, your participation, and again, the objective is to have a stock-taking exercise, so we are here to listen to you. Thank you very much. Lastly, I would like to give you the floor. We were supposed to be joined by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who is also in the Digital Economy Task Force Advisory Board. He is right now in Malaysia. I apologize if we cannot get him online. He was supposed to be online. We had him about 1 hour ago, but we are behind schedule, and there is a meeting between GCC and ASEAN as we speak now in Malaysia. So my team is trying to get Professor Sachs online. If not, we will move on until we get in touch with him. I have no signal that we have Jeffrey Sachs. Therefore, lastly, I will pass you the floor to take over. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bukamba. Now I'm just going to pass on the mic to Honorable Minister Kumbele to give us to set the stage together with the presentation from the Director General.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kone. Thank you for the moment, ladies and gentlemen. To Mr. Ba, I'm also extremely excited that we will be addressed by the Ross Access at some stage. It's quite a momentous, makes it a momentous occasion. His Excellency, Dima Aya, President of the Design Cooperation Council, Mr. Coleman, to the region of Smart Africa, the Director of South Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this consultation between the G20 Presidency and Zambia Leaders Summit as articulated by Mr. Barr. We want to thank Zambia for coordinating this important session. Ms. Aya and Mr. Kone Abunabal will serve as co-facilitator. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of South Africa's G20 Presidency is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. This is reflected in the working groups of the G20. The G20 Presidency is a defining moment for our continent. South Africa committed to working with all international partners to enhance global efforts to bridge the digital divide. Around 10% of South Africans and about 35% of Africans remain offline. Our focus on digital space is on digital connectivity and inclusion, the transformative potential of digital public infrastructure, how to unleash the potential of MSMEs for innovation, and inclusive, equitable, just artificial intelligence for sustainable development. These topics are not exhaustive, ladies and gentlemen. They reflect priority. Our presidency this year will build on the work of recent presidencies of Indonesia, India, Brazil, and now South Africa. I believe that this presidency should be strategic and facilitated as Africa has continued to experience relatively high growth rates, and this trend is likely to continue. Africa is also blessed with a youthful population, which will help drive economic growth in the long term. Our continent is also home to many critical minerals that the digital economy requires to function. Those choosing to invest in our continent now will benefit in the long term by helping establish the issue and greater knowledge of the market. As I said earlier, in my opening remarks, our presidency has brought the G20 to Africa for the first time. Because of the time facilitator which is at our disposal, I would like to request the DG to make a special presentation. Dr. Jonathan will actually lead this activity in South Africa.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, good afternoon. Just a quick highlight with regards to the G20 presidency. The Deputy Minister has indicated that the focus is on Africa and Africa's development, and that is basically fundamentally what we are aiming to achieve as we host the G20 and drive therefore the development agenda in Africa. Our national approach to the G20 presidency is also informed by the need to ensure that the G20 remains sensitive to the needs of the developing economies, and that there is also an opportunity for us to then build on the achievements that we had from the previous presidencies, starting from Indonesia, India, and Brazil. And most certainly we will be advancing the AU Agenda 2063. In terms of our priorities, just at a high level, in terms of the deliverables, there is at the summit level, and I'm going to come back and zoom in with regards to the digital economy working group. But the first priority is on the task force on inclusive economic growth, industrialization, and employment, as well as reducing inequalities. The second of the priorities is on the issues of food security, which remain key. And then lastly is now the third priority task force, which very much focus on the issues of artificial intelligence. I think the issues of data governance we have been discussing it quite extensively. But more than anything else, how do we unleash the innovation for ourselves in terms of driving the digital transformation? And that has already been articulated in our area segment. Highlight a number of working groups. I would like to really zoom in on the working group related to the digital economy, which is driven by our department, and perhaps then to talk on that we are moving from the Brazil ministerial declaration, where then it was indicated that the next presidency of G20 South Africa looks forward to welcoming everybody to African soil, and we need to also basically build on the previous presidencies, addressing the issues related to the digital divide, promoting equality as well as sustainable and inclusive development. And therefore, these are our priorities as the G20. South Africa focusing in the main, one is on the connectivity. We have been also, again, in our discussion with the Deputy Minister indicated that we still have a long way in terms of bridging the digital divide, also alluded to by the ITU. We are working with our large partners, ITU being one of them, amongst others, as far as ensuring that we need to bridge the digital divide. The second focus is on the digital public infrastructure and its transformative powers in as far as building an integrated governance framework, measuring obviously on public value aspects as well as the implementation of standards. I think to underscore this is obviously the issues with regards to the data, how we maintain and keep the data, and how we empower the citizens in terms of the use of the data. And therefore we will be looking at the implementation with regards to the standards, access to data, as well as the skills development aspect. Key to South Africa's development, the continent's development, and I think globally, has been obviously the emphasis with regards to innovation and how you then bring in your small, medium enterprises as far as to ensure that they are not able to come up with the innovation, but also to then build on this digital economy. And obviously the last of the priorities is equitable, inclusive, as well as the just AI, addressing the issues related to inequalities, obviously the issues related to algorithm bias, as well as access to data. In terms of the statistics, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I mean, the percentage with regards to internet usage, borrowing on the source from the ITU, you would obviously see from the graph that Africa is lagged behind, obviously followed by the Asia Pacific group, as well as the other regions as well. And therefore, the need for us to then redress these issues related to the digital inequalities. But more than anything else, failure to connect everyone will cause existing inequalities to be further exacerbated as people will get left behind, disconnected from the economy, and obviously the vulnerabilities that we associated with that. And therefore, that is why there is going to be great focus with regards to the connectivity or inclusive digital development. Perhaps moving on then to the digital public infrastructure from a South African perspective, and I'm happy also, I think a number of countries obviously have made great inroads with regards to this. Our focus is really to basically look from the citizen's perspective, from the cradle to the grave, focus looking at how then we integrate issues related to your services, data exchanges, digital identity being a priority, as well as making sure that the data and hardware and interoperability systems are efficient, and obviously the issues related to cybersecurity. So there is going to be great focus with regards to the digital public infrastructure. We really do appreciate that this is following on the India-Brazil presidency, and therefore South Africa is looking at developing an integrated governance framework. Moving into the next priority 3, which is digital innovation, ecosystem unleashing obviously the powers that I indicated of the SMEs. This work recognizes the prosperity of startups as well as digital entrepreneurs to lead in innovation at different levels, and the nature of ICT sector to be innovative driven as well as the ABA. And then lastly, because of time, I will quickly move. We're looking at the equitable, inclusive, as well as the just AI. We understand that there has been great advances, especially in terms of other regions. But we're basically going to look at successful practices that can be used in developing countries to ensure data access for medium, small enterprises and for research purposes to enable development as well as training in terms of various AI models. And following on Brazil's presidency in 2024, we will continue to look at challenges around information integrity as well as the potential in terms of interventions. As indicated, we've also come up with an initiative by our President, His Excellency President Ramaphosa, in as far as coming up with an AI program, a data governance for innovative sustainable development for the continent. And this, I'm happy that is being led by the AU Commission, working with various other partners as well. So the AI task force will then be looking in terms of the issues related to your applications for the SDGs, how we drive them, and obviously looking at various working groups as well. We will be looking at how to streamline our work across the various sectors. Last, then we, as I said, the AI summit, which we are hoping to convene on the margins of our digital economy working group, and also this is the outcome leading to the AI summit, is that it presents an opportunity as well as for the G20 members and the international partners to establish new partnerships, and as I said, with the AU at the helm and other member states making a contribution. Just a very quick brief, this summarizes the priorities, as I said, 4 of them: digital inclusion, digital public infrastructure. There is going to be a workshop that we intend to have, and we would like to invite as many of the partners as possible for that. Highlight, these are the dates for the next round of segments as well, under the chair's leadership. So we will have the AI for Africa conference, AI task force from 3 to 5 September. It's probably going to be in Cape Town, in South Africa. Then we will also have the medium small enterprise innovative event on the margins of the last of the G20 Digital Economy Working Group, and leading to the ministerial meeting. And then we will also have the working group as well as the AI task force and the ministerial meeting taking place on the 29th to the 30th of September, and this will be held in Cape Town. I'd like to quickly then wrap it up and just say that our legacy stemming from the G20 is really hoping that we will be able to have then the partnership and solidarity as far as African digital transformation and the digital basis supporting SMEs. We're also hoping that we will then close the digital divide, focusing on digital connectivity. And this is the connectivity that we would understand will actually then support the AI initiatives within the continent. And therefore, then the last of the legacy projects is then going to be looking at your AI-driven programs. One of those has been the issues with regards to local language. But I think there's many other opportunities in terms of how we improve the efficiency around it, and obviously the engagement around the AI policy. And I think this is some of the work I think Chair, you started off on, and that's my Africa coming up with the AI framework. So that would be, thank you very much, the summary with regards to the priorities.
Thank you very much, Dr. General. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time, I'll hand over to Dr. Lasina, whose capable hands will facilitate what is expected to be a very productive election. Doctor?
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Excellencies and colleagues. It's really an honor to guide this vital conversation in South Africa, giving opportunity to non-members of the G20 in this really spirit of what we call in Africa, Ubuntu, I am because of who you are. So as we build towards the 23rd and beyond, ladies and gentlemen, let's remember that Africa is not really standing at the periphery of the digital revolution. In fact, if you look at our historical growth, we are a continent not like any other continent because we do not inherit legacy systems. So it's really a great opportunity for us to embrace all the rich technology to fullness. And Africa is at the center. The world's, the world's youngest population, dynamic entrepreneurial ecosystems, and growing policy alignment. Africa has immense potential, but no country around the world here is being judged by indices of potential. So potential alone is not enough. So our task here today is to define policies and partnership pathways that would unlock that promise for all. Let us anchor our dialogue in South Africa's 4 digital pillars, my sister mentioned inclusive connectivity, digital public infrastructure, DPI, innovation ecosystem for MSMEs, and just AI governance. There are not just 3. These are the interdependent building blocks of the resilient digital future. So now, I invite you to actively contribute to each segment. We will keep our discussion very interactive, and your input will shape the next stages of the G20 journey. So starting from the first engagement, as I call it, like actually, yes, so far.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Mr. Vice Chairman. Just wanted to intervene because second Vice Chairman DC is here. She just joined because I think she's losing her voice. But importantly, before getting into the discussion itself, it's important, as we discussed with the chair, to measure the stage of the digital economy of the nations. For that, DCO has developed, all of you know, as presented in New York at the United General Assembly, the Digital Economy Navigator. So, Madam Vice Chair, I would like you to give us a flavor about this Digital Economy Navigator, which is not only a tool, but as well as a digital economy roadmap. So it will provide us a tool of reference. Then, if you allow me, Mr. Vice Chairman, if you can get into the discussion and go around the table. This is just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. I need to bring it closer. Okay. So can you hear me now? Good. Thank you so much for making this happen. It is very much timely right now that we have these discussions and referring to the Digital Economy Navigator for us to really expedite and accelerate our economic growth, social growth. We need to decide or make our decisions based on data and based on the connection also and bridging these gaps between the public sector and the private sector. So the Digital Economy Navigator is simply providing a tool that enables countries to identify the gaps of digital economy maturity. So we see as much fragmentation in terms of the awareness of the status of every country when it comes to their maturity in the digital economy. And therefore, the focus is fragmented. Rather than focusing on the must-haves, we see the focus on the nice-to-haves. Rather than focusing on connectivity, for instance, we focus on cryptocurrency policies, for instance. So here's where we come with a set of must-haves, either enablers like infrastructure, like reforms, cloud, policy regulations, and also human capital, but also digital businesses, like looking into digital trade, taxation, triple P engagements, how much is the country viable in terms of digital trade and as well as cross-border expansions. Last but not least, we focus on digital society, which is the contribution more of women to the digital economy, as well as education. We look at health, IP, human rights, and therefore we put these set of criteria, and then we look at the gap. But we don't leave our evidence there. We identify what are the best solutions to bridge these gaps. What is in the world that is working that can help support bridging the gap? And then we bring in the private sector, and we connect the private sector to these gaps. So we provide these countries, we connect the supply with the demand using that navigator. So the emphasis here is that the discussion when we talk about inclusivity and we talk about bridging the gap, we need the right tools. And the digital economy navigator is the first step to identifying these gaps and trying to solve them.
And if I can ask, this tool is free of charge. Free of charge. I think you can increase your applause.
Well said, and I think this tool is to know exactly where you're going, you have to know where you are, first of all. I believe that the tools allow all of us to know where we're heading, particularly on our continent where we have only 38% of people connected per the ITU recent report. So this session here, now I'm going to invite you to actively contribute to each segment. As I said, we'll keep the discussion interactive, and your input will shape the next stage of the G20 agenda. So starting with the first segment, I'm going to take it like we boarded the flight. The flight is from the segment called Inclusive Infrastructure, and we will be landing in just the government. So, first question is asking, how can we ensure infrastructure strategies address the last mile? And the second question is, what data gaps exist and how can they be closed through G20 support? And I will invite here, ladies and gentlemen, TDRA of the UAE to take the floor to share some insight with us. We will be followed by CRA of Qatar.
I don't see TRA way around the table. And just to advise, we have lots of people because the debate and lunch, but I don't see TRA way.
So we have to decide between the food and the session. All right. Well taken. What about the CRA of Qatar? Happy?
Feel free, by the way, CRA Qatar is able to take the floor. We have, since we don't have TRA, we have Etisalat International, the CEO, Mr. Khalifa Shams. Khalifa, thank you for taking the floor.
So I thought maybe before we get regulator and government, it's good to hear the private sector speaking. And before we dive into the little areas of questions, it's good that the private sector and my colleagues from the private sector allow me to set the stage of some of the points. I've been in the sector for 32 years, so I know a thing or two about the sector, and I don't look African, but I'm more African than a lot of people around the table because we operate in 10 markets in Africa today. When it comes to telecom, I mean, if you track the top business risks for telecom, and this is valid globally across all, emerging, developing, and developed markets, regulatory risk is one of the highest. And regulatory mean regulation, I mean government. And for businesses that want to do a lot of investment in AI, infrastructure, transforming industries, if there is ambiguity on some of the regulation, businesses step back. And I've seen this more in ambiguity, more in Africa compared to the other part of the world. This is why this is one of the fundamentals. If we want investment in businesses forward in this new area, regulation, visibility on impact of regulation has to be part of the element. We cannot be one at a time. And as an industry, I think we've done good for the market that we're operating in. I mean, if you look at the inclusion, in terms of connectivity and inclusion, I think we've done really good across the board from the markets that all of us operate in, ensuring that mobile is in the hand of big chunk of the society, and more now data access. And if you look at financial inclusion, also as a sector, we've done good. We stepped in markets where the gap in the financial system could not serve it, and we leverage on our assets, access, data, and regulation to filling that gap in financial inclusion. So when it comes to now the new era, because our industries in the last 32 years that I experienced had tremendous growth from the early 90s, continued, seen some stagnation, some bumpiness, depends on the market that you're operating in. But there is that big, shining lights that's showing a big inspiration for a big jump forward, which is on the impact of AI. Not only on individuals, but on industries and on countries. And this is where big investment need to come in the form of infrastructure that was mentioned, and in the form of also developing talent and education and startups in this area. So I think one of the spirit has to be a win-win-win. So a win for the government, a win for the private sector that would like to impact, and a win for the people of that particular market. They have to see the impact of this one. So this is why, going back, clarity of the regulations and the impact of this regulation, no ambiguity, and everything is calculated. This might be, sometimes we see different moves in the form of spectrum, in the form of infrastructure investment, in the form of government stepping into existing markets and like to take a share of things like that. If we keep a spirit of a win-win-win and try to solve, and I'm glad, as well as there is a digital inclusion measure based on data, so at least it makes it very much visible for all investors, existing and people, new people coming in, it's becoming clear. And then, as part of South Africa taking over the hosting the G20, being the representative of Africa, it's good also to set the guidelines in terms of interworking, and I hope as governments around the world, they see the telecom sector is a very close partner of government in delivering such objective that was explained earlier.
Thank you very much for this insightful. I think this is a nice segue to invite my sister from MTN to take the floor. Give us a few insights.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Presidencies and colleagues around the table. Let me start with the topic of regulation. I think our view is more nuanced in the sense that from an African perspective, we believe that we have an opportunity to harmonize regulation to enable better trade and cooperation, to attract investment, because harmonized regulation means consistency for investors. And we have an opportunity in different areas. It doesn't have to be citizen, but we should prioritize taxation, trade, data, KYC, including customer data management, and cloud, to your point. I think that also we need to accelerate policy development and acceleration, not only for the African market, because we cooperate with other markets across the world to ensure that our interests and our investments are aligned to a similar approach to regulation. So one side of the coin is an opportunity, the other side of the coin is risk in our doing so. We would like to see the G20 presenting an opportunity for collaboration in the regulatory space. I think, just to add that Africa will have the youngest working population in the like everyone who wants to benefit, participate, and reap the benefits of the potential that Africa has. That would mean that, first and foremost, speaking for the TN, in every market we operate in, when we say we want to be in a market, we are asking and we're saying that everyone else that seeks to benefit from it should localize. Because localization means agreeing to be accountable, to invest in the infrastructure of such market, but also to participating in the growth of the market. And that goes for telecommunications sector and all other technology sectors in Africa and across the world. I think that's the point that we have emphasized in all our forums that we have been in. It's quite important that we understand that investment also means accountability in the markets where we operate. The second is because we know that Africa presents such a significant opportunity, it also means that there's a greater call for the likes of ATA to invest in digital skills that will drive digital inclusion, including financial inclusion, to make sure that no one gets left behind, particularly women and children, and particularly in the African space, where you have a lot of people that are left behind that also have an opportunity in the rural areas. So whilst we are keen to partner with new technologies to bridge this gap, together with the right regulatory framework, because that will accelerate inclusion, coverage, and therefore penetration in digital and financial inclusion. We believe that this also needs to be done in collaboration with governments and ensure that right policy frameworks are put in place, but also that we are also simultaneously sunsetting technologies that don't serve us, making affordable spectrum available for rural operators, creating investment frameworks and enable investment in infrastructure, because you can't really rely on a particular type of technology. We realize, particularly for Africa, substantial cuts last year, that reliance on a single form of technology can be quite exposing. But also enabling frameworks to allow for investment across different sectors so that it's a collaborative and joint effort. And in closing, I'd like to say that India is supportive of the G20 agenda, and the key areas in digital public infrastructure, digital inclusion, including AI, and these are areas that we already have developed for leadership and are willing to partner the leadership.
Thank you very much, Sister. Would like you to introduce yourself?
Let me say from the Indian group about the group chief legal and regional officer.
Thank you very much for this insight. I think now I'm going to pass on to yes. Can you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm from Cyprus Regulator, and I'm the chair of the Euro-Mediterranean Regulators Group. Let me first of all thank the two speakers from the private sector for bringing the regulatory issue up. Let me start with a question, if I may. We understand there's a lot of regulation, and you're rightly mentioning it. I am not absolutely sure if you mean telecoms regulation alone or a multiplicity of regulations impacting. On our side, as telecoms regulators, what we are the best interests of the sector, we think our interests are aligned. Of course, we believe in win, win, win mentality. That's our objective. What I often say in different fora is we do not need more regulation. We do not need less regulation either. We need the right regulation. And the right regulation can help develop markets. And it can help and encourage investment. One of the things we are worried about, and I'm closing with this, is so much regulation from other aspects. For example, environmental regulation. If it's imposed on you by an environmental agency that does not understand the sector, there's a good chance it will do more harm than good. If the regulator that understands you and wants the sector to prosper also takes the responsibility of the environmental regulation, it will be most probably the proper one. Thank you very much.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for this time. I'm going to pass it back to you. If you'd like to be, I will go behind that to basically take your time for intervention. Thank you.
My name is Adam Delish, and I'm the Regional Director of IT for the United States. As a UN specialized agency, we've been around since 160 years, we've seen an evolution across multiple levels. Now, we're not only on ground, but also heading into space. The matter of digital economy, and as you mentioned it very rightly, is becoming an incredibly important fact. Digital economy, I think the best way to approach it at the moment is multi-layered. We have multiple stakeholders across the table. There are many key players. It spans all the way, as Mr. Rashad mentioned earlier on, from government all the way to private sector, as well as to consumers, as a colleague from IT mentioned earlier on. At IT, of course, we're doing a lot of things. We're happy to be working with sister organizations as well, PCO. I personally have the pleasure of being there during the inauguration of PCO, and a lot of work has been put in that organization. But not only that, all the other organizations that are there, I think the cross-country, cross-regional, cross-continent collaborations come key when we face digital challenges. In today's world, before I talk about last mile connectivity as you requested, in today's world, maybe a good question we should ask ourselves is, how is the digital divide gap looking? Are we really reducing the gap, or is it growing? We talk a lot about rural areas, unconnected areas, but if we look at the fact that in the developed communities, in our major cities, people today are left behind because they don't know how to use ChatGPT, or they don't know how to integrate with upcoming new services. These are things that we need through awareness, through collaboration, through exchange of knowledge. It's very key and important not only providing platforms to this, we also support the countries at national, regional, and global levels. When I talk about our contribution as international telecommunication unit to connectivity, I'm glad to see some of the indicators or figures of our indicators that are mentioned in your presentation earlier on about South Africa. But it's also the transition map that we carry as an exercise with the countries. It's the project we have with UNICEF on data, which is connecting schools and connecting health centers and hospitals as well. And we're expanding on that. And I think it's not just the ITU. In today's world, we realize that we look at what the Secretary General of the UN is saying all over. All the UN now is talking about
I, as a regional director sitting in the country, is not just when we talk about private and public sector, but it's also the public sector itself amongst itself. We have seen a challenge in some countries where different ministries don't coordinate with each other. That is a challenge that I think we also need as a multi-stakeholder platform to face and we need to try to resolve that issue. Yes, maybe regulation is a hinder, but I think you should revisit what we do. Maybe you agree with our business plans in terms of how we address the digital economy. And again, it's not only about regulation, it's good, as the colleague earlier mentioned, we need to have some guidelines, we need to have something that makes us work in a certain framework or context. But it's also important that we innovate, it's also important that we change the way that we think. As I said, starting with copper and fiber cables, and now we're talking about satellite. Today, we have 2.6 billion people that are not connected globally. The question that maybe goes to everyone is, do we lack the means of connectivity, or the ability to use those means to connect? Very honestly, with emerging technologies today, there are multiple technologies that can help us connect people globally. That 2.6 can drop by half very quickly if we collaborate, if we come together. And I think the work that the IT is doing in study groups, in conferences, also depends on our membership, and we would like our membership to drive the work of the whole community force. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking.
Thank you very much for this contribution. I'm going to ask the floor to GSMA.
Hello everybody, my name is Angela Wong. I'm in the GSMA Sub-Saharan Africa based in Nairobi. And so I want to just talk about the focus of the G20, and I think for me, the submission is about we really have to do something about the gap that exists in Africa. All the provisions we've seen are about AI, but I want to share with you some facts. So let's talk about some evidence. Informed situation about Africa today. This is 2025. When you're talking about digital inclusion, we're talking about 610 million Africans who are close to a broadband connection. We're talking about 3G and 4G, the era of 5G, are covered but have never gone online. When you look at that 60%, 610 million are safe. 40% have no smartphone device. 4% do. So you ask them, why are they going online? Could be digital literacy, or the content doesn't make sense for them. And then 16% have a smart feature phone. So they have potential. But probably it's the data cost that's too high. So they don't go online ever. Now what does that mean? It means that we have to look at the future, because the future really matters. We're talking about AI. We can't do AI when nobody is online. And yet we have the coverage gap, so the infrastructure is in the ground. So let's go into the infrastructure now. And I think that was the point that Excellency made. When you look at Africa in general today, and you're looking at a very, when you look at 5G, Africa has only 2% of all mobile internet connections are on 5G. And we are halfway through the 5G generation. With the 40% are on 4G. Of those who are, that's that 40%, 30% that are online. 40% are on 4G and 47% are on 3G. In a world where 3G has been shut down in the global north. So what does that mean? If we're trying to get to 5G and we already have struggling with 4G, what's the issue? And I want to paint an issue here around energy as the infrastructure that is in the continent. Because today, only 12% of the sites in Africa consume more than 5 kilowatts of energy. The rest are below, about 2 kilowatts, 3 kilowatts. So how are we going to consume data traffic in a world of AI, where it's all about data? And the projection for Africa is that we should quadruple the growth of data by 2030. And our statistics show that by 2030, only 16% of our sites will be consuming more than 5 kilowatts of data. So we have a challenge here. right? When you look at, for example, and I'll go deeper, not just Africa in general, we've done a study on DRC, for example, and looked at the energy analysis. And we've seen that out of the only 30% of our sites in DRC are connected to the grid. And 63% of the sites are just a kilometer away from the national grid. Meaning, 25% are close to the grid but are not connected. And you can reduce the cost of those operational costs due to different forms of energy, through diesel and batteries, by up to 15%. 50% cost that could be passed on to customers, which will reduce the cost of data. So there's a chicken and an egg. What came first, the chicken or the egg? So I propose that when we're looking at Mission 300, connecting 300 million people to electricity, we should also connect those 300 million to a smart device. Otherwise, we just go round and round in circles, and then this will continue to be a challenge for Africa, even up to 2030. I submit, Chair.
Thank you very much. This is insightful. Yes, brother, you can take the floor. Please introduce yourself.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'm Andrew O'Neill. I'm the Chief Regulatory Officer for the group. I must say I'm extremely pleased to hear all the different contributions around the room. We've talked about regulation, we've talked of course about energy, we've talked about the rights areas, and frankly it's extremely encouraging. One request I would have, I'll keep it very simple. Now that the G20 of course is moving on to South Africa, one special focus should be on landlocked countries. Why landlocked countries? Well, here's the issue. Today in Africa, we have 16 landlocked countries. And typically, what is the challenge that landlocked countries face? High cost of internet. High cost of internet services. But besides the high cost of internet services, generally, these markets are at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to hyperscalers coming to invest in the markets. So one special consideration that must be put in this is how do we make sure that we create a level playing field for the landlocked countries so that we prevent a situation where internet costs become significantly higher. Again, think about it. We're going to start having internet services, computing power. This is going to ratchet up because of the utility hard. Frankly, landlocked countries, for example, like South Sudan, could find themselves at a significant disadvantage just because of the cost of maybe, for example, IP transit or the cost of the internet services in general. So one request definitely to South Africa, as part of the drive, as part of the initiative, please a focus on landlocked countries. Let's see how we can come up with a collaboration model with the countries that actually have seaports to be able to drive down the cost of internet services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think also my sister, I think we have a lot of those. The G20. I'm going to pass the floor to my sister from India. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. On the first question related to what actually is the issue of, I think it ties to the question of landlocked countries. It is not the absence of capital that can invest in Africa that sees the potential of Africa, even the economic benefits. After all, we have said that Africa is going to be the largest economy because it's got the largest opportunity. Therefore, for telecommunications, for example, if data is the new gold, the only way you're going to make AI successful is if you go to the largest population and therefore have access to the data, whether through hyperscaler qualification strategies and therefore monetization of that data. Right? But the issue that we have is actually the multifaceted. So telecommunications
Thank you very much. We pass the mic to Ibrahim Nokia.
Hello everyone, pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Maybe one comment generally about the G20 process itself, because I think most of you know the private sector has a voice as part of the G20, which runs parallel to the G20, and I have to be part of one of the task forces. So in the digital transformation task force, this has been already ongoing work since I was in Cape Town during the launch of February. And basically, we are actually creating a policy report, and normally we are 50% progress at that report. It should be ready by June, because it has to be submitted to the public during the 20th September, and that pretty much joins all the pillars that we discussed in the SC, Parliament, and Ceiling, the DPI, and so on. So I think in the end, it's a report, it's about the governments to do that. Governments are sovereign, they have to take those maybe just to go back to the previous comments, I think clearly what you see in the context of Africa, what's happening is you have a massive increase in sustainable capacity. So Africa today is giant because there's so many sustainables with impressive capacity, and in the end, not every country has an access to an administration, and this is basically explaining a little bit what's happening in some of the countries. Now, there's some work that's been done because what we call today corridors or these protocols that cross countries. We are actually doing one of those from Guinea all the way to South Africa across 7 countries. And I think that's not enough for any of those initiatives, north, south, east, west. And the question is always about sometimes picking the right route, stability of some countries which means to say we have to stay inside to see some of the countries, which unfortunately is a missed opportunity. So, and then of course, you have to think of the inter-country agreements because it has a clause and you have to have a partner that will operate some of those countries. But I think the technology there, we know how to do it. But we need more of those. And also, we have to think of sometimes the relationship with the associated with the staff. Some countries actually they put up completely. So the intention also to have alternative routes, because you have to have also redundant routes so that you don't get cut. Minimum associated with the product, and basically countries go in there for a couple of hours.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. For this segment, this is a very long vote. I think we need to pass the last intervention to Justin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen. I'm a Senior Director of Public Policy and Communications at the Sub-Saharan Africa, also based in Nairobi. I've got just a few thoughts to add to the conversation that's going on. And the first one is to say, a lot of the discussions that we hear around policy reforms that are required, one ingredient that is critical that we need to make sure that it remains front and center is political will. A lot of the countries in Africa, a lot of the policies that we need implemented in the countries, but the implementation of countries is also lacking. We have the policies developed, they sit at different offices, but we don't see these policies in the light of day. It is important that when we develop some of these policies, spectrum, taxation, and so on and so forth, that we actually see the progress and the impact of these policies on the continent. And that is one area I think, just like pushing for that political will to come into achieve. Number two is the need for harmonization of these policies. Because a lot of countries do have the policies developed, but they're different, very different for different countries. So in this area of data, for example, cross-border data security is critical. But where you have data sovereignty focused in a lot of our countries and others already become very difficult as progressive solutions such as AI, cloud computing, and so on and so forth. So there has to be a focus on harmonization of policies on the continent to be able to provide that investment climate that is required to drive emerging technologies. And last but not least, just to help us bring to your understanding and association that GCC has come on already, which we call the Digital Africa Index. It comprises of 2 indices, and this is came to mind when we accepted to discuss the digital marketing. And this is the Digital Innovation Society Index, which helps understand the level of adoption of digital services by governments, consumers, and different institutions. And over and above that, it goes an extra layer to provide what we call the digital policy and regulatory index that gives an understanding of the policy levers that will be pulled by different countries at the national level to be able to drive the digitalization of economies in Africa. The index is focused on Africa, and it's one that is supporting data-driven policy decisions, actionable or the actionable decisions that can be able to drive meaningful change on our continent. So do encourage that the data analysis and can be able to see value in this. So by and large, just summary, policy is critical, data-driven approach, and has to be at a harmonized manner so that we can see real meaningful impact in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and this is a very important segment of our first Presidency, and as I said, I'm just mentioning, as this is our meeting, I can only message, and messenger, I will tell you what it is. So if we summarize a little bit, how can we ensure infrastructure? So we hear from the Excellency CEO of we hear about, in the beginning he talks about a transparent regulatory environment, this agile, the regulation has to be agile. Then we hear about also from NDN, we need an agile policy because we need consistency in terms of the private sector. Then we hear from regulatory environment, we said, in fact, if you look at the regulatory environment, it's multidimensional because the environment we build, the environment area, they hit you with a different regulatory environment which impact work with your also. ITU, wait a minute, infrastructure right, regulation right, but what are we doing? We hear usually about the digital gap, or when we talk about inclusion, now we have to speak of AI inclusion. Even in the most developed countries today, people with a PhD in anthropology may consider to be indigenous people, technically speaking, in AI. That's very true. And we hear also from my sister, Angela, who talks about, wait a minute, we can do AI, it's true. But if you don't have access to the internet with you, so when you talk about inclusivity in terms of infrastructure, let's also think about what about using this app? Investment already laid out in those rural areas, and people are not using it. Maybe you might not be related to really investment, might be related to investment mentality, which is how do we change regulations to make it more attractive to lower costs or to develop local content or even to capacity building in the cyber hygiene. So it's a very complex matter. So when we talk today, when we address what these gaps exist, many, how can they close, how can they be closed through the G20 support? Me as a manager say, in the beginning we were talking about digital inclusion. Now we have to talk about, even I would say regulatory inclusion, because regulatory now, it's not just a technical regulatory. Digital economy has evolved. So it's not just telecom, spectrum, and all that. So are we singing the same song? It has to sing the same song, which goes all the way down to AI inclusion. That is the message I am taking to you, Mr. Chairman. And also, I think Honorable Excellency, I would like to begin.
That message, so we can conclude. I think also, as we heard about all these challenges, the South Africa Presidency for the G20 this year is historic for the global South. It's an opportunity not only to identify the challenge, but also the voices of the global South. And every 12 individuals in the global north can, in terms of digital accessibility, we have only one in the global South. And this is where it's an opportunity to start the focus of the G20 on the investment and looking South and bridging that gap between the North and South. And this is an addition and ask Your Excellency to be put on the agenda.
Wow. Very interesting. Usually, necessary comes with questions. And then you do the assembly with the message. You will try to answer the questions. I'm in a very comfortable place. Because my message is, I won't ever process the day. They are coming with the ideas. My duty is to find better goal to the G20. But before I make any closing remark, I just want to make some comments. I spoke to a lot of your issues.
I think I'm exploring all of this, and I always say this in South Africa. No matter what you talk about in terms of technological development, you have to start with the basics, and I think GSMA underscored that. And I think GSMA, and then you probably need to have a close session with your members, because if we're really going to say we want to drive the issues of AI, fundamentally we must make sure that they've got the infrastructure in place. I understand the balance that you need with regards to the energy side and obviously the need for coordinated planning for it, but obviously key to everything that we want in terms of development is underpinned by the digital infrastructure fundamentally. Giving an assurance with regards to the landlocked countries, most certainly that is one of the key parameters with regards to digital inclusivity. We're really going to talk about meaningful digital inclusion in line with what we've been saying in ITU. That also means that it must address the issue related to data cost as well as affordable devices. And that's also another initiative that we're also championing as well for Africa as one of the next projects to ensure that we really do drive the issues with regards to affordable smart devices in the hands of business and citizens as well as digital divide. So I'd like to really thank, and I think I appreciate the input. I also saw a lot of, in terms of offers, the Deputy Minister, around the table to say that we're going to partner with us, especially from the business community and the G20. And we look forward to the cabinet report in terms of incorporating some of those recommendations to the declaration, the ministerial declaration, to the finalized system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, I think we'll but having said that, before I don't want to talk about it, but I think the DG has done critical work. In my corner, is summarizing the entire information, and then we will talk about security. But I thought what is exciting today is that listening to the contributors is that G20 is a function of the negative results of science, of global science. So G20 comes to exist. There is a call, for instance, that if G20 could present Win-win. Can we see society? Okay. Thank you. All right. Absolutely research, public, private, at all material times. The master's leadership is to determine how that balance in line with the challenges of time. All material times. And I think that is the state. But another thing of Sina, I love so much, so smart. Acceleration of policy. I've said this several times to you that unless we change the archaic nature of processes through which we make policies, for the beginning example, we meet here because there's a challenge to Sudan today. We develop an approach, we discover that we need the policy. It takes 5 years to make that policy. The problem we see today, in 5 years' time, where is it? So the challenge is that it is urgent that digital literacy should be fast-tracked so that consultations in making policies are quicker than they are now. So that once the policy is formulated and proposed, just put it online. Our people are able to respond online. You will be surprised how agile and how relevant we remain. And I think that speaks to acceleration. And I want to close by this because I get to stay here. Mr. Tewala said, time for passive optimism is over. It's time for active intentionality. Next to me, Madam said, less reflection, more action. You don't need more education, we do what? Correct regulations. Am I correct? You don't need more regulation. We need correct regulation. The other fundamental principle is we need to move as fast in making sure that the regulators find the simplest way of actually regulating. Because that time, sometimes, it is very critical in actually giving us the best meat. Having said that, I've said, she will summarize it on behalf of Mr. Ma, on behalf of my brilliant facilitators, for every time again, for giving a lot of input, and then on behalf of all of you with the quality inputs. With the powers vested in me, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
What I gleaned from this meeting, and thinking all the inputs that I already very to do. So the G20 digital agenda must remain responsive to African development needs, with a focus on inclusive connectivity, digital infrastructure, innovation ecosystems, and governance. Public-private collaboration is indispensable. Private sector commitment hinges on regulated clarity, fiscal incentives, clearing policy frameworks that lower risk and unlock long-term value. Tools like the digital economy navigator and ITU's GIGA transmission map, for example, are helping countries identify digital gaps and line priorities. Data must drive decision-making. Regulated harmonization is key across sectors and borders. It is crucial to enable cross-border data flows, also shared infrastructure, scalable AI governance, and to develop the enablers in place. We must ensure that no one left behind, including urban and underserved populations, which we have heard is the case now with AI, and 11 of our countries which face these structural challenges. Africa's youth, talent, digital vision must be supported by enabling environments that promote globalization, accountability, and inclusive growth. The implementation gap must be addressed, which was highlighted by Jamie today. Policies must translate to action with investment frameworks and incentives that make digital transformation real and sustainable. Finally, G20 must serve as a platform for practical cooperation
you very much. Thank you.